Reefer madness, reefer madness. Reefer madness, reefer madness. Save our kids.
Hello, Champagne Dreamers. Welcome back to my channel. I'm your girl, Miss J, your trash queen of glam, geek, and gore. And today's video is just in time for 420. We are going to be talking about the Mary Jane, the wacky weed, the reefer that caused all the madness, that good Christian tobacco, marijuana. Now listen. As we get started, I am so far from monetized. I'm not worried about that, but I know that there are sometimes bots that are lurking around, and sometimes things go under like little shadow bans and things. So from here on out, as much as possible, I'm going to try to just say MJ, okay? We good? You know? So you'll know what I'm talking about. But I just want to make sure that this is as accessible to as many people as possible, because this is 100% not adult content. This is something that everybody should be aware of, everybody should know about, and everybody should care about. So we're going to be doing a couple of things today. First, we're going to be talking about all of the MJ-themed products that I have in my collection. And we're also going to be talking about why, absolutely, unequivocally, MJ should be legal and available for medicinal and recreational use in every state in this country today. Absolutely. No question. I think I'm going to convince you by the end. I hope so. So we're going to talk about all the reasons why it should be legalized. We're also going to talk about a lot of the reasons why it's not legalized. Spoiler alert, it's racism.
White people ruin everything.
So if you're interested in that conversation or just seeing these products from my collection, then stick around. We're about to blaze up that conversation, and we're getting into it right now. So let's talk about why. Why do I want to talk about this? I personally am not a really huge fan of the MJ. I'm not a big user or anything like that. I am not going to pretend like I haven't. I certainly have tried things. But I'm not really a fan, especially of smoking, just because the smoke from MJ really irritates my lungs. I cough like a noob every single time. I usually end up getting some sort of sore throat. I don't know what it is. The smoke just does not agree with me, and it just interacts with me poorly. I also sometimes make some poor decisions, but that's for another video. Check out my OnlyFans. So vaping isn't that bad. I've tried that once or twice. Didn't really get into it. It's something that if it's around, if I'm out at a party when I used to go to parties, if it was there, I would do it, but I was never like seeking it out or whatever. I mean, I don't want to invest in that equipment. That comes out of my Sephora budget. No ma'am. Now, in typical thicker girl fashion, I do enjoy an edible from time to time. And maybe when we hit 200 subscribers, I will do a separate video where I talk about some of my interesting adventures that I've had with edibles in the past, including one of my most joyful, ecstatic, fabulous nights that involved 3 gummy bears and a laser show set to Beyonce's Lemonade album.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
But in terms of MJ legalization, I started looking into this a few years ago when I became aware of a push for legal MJ in North Dakota, where I live. Now, there were 2 petitions going around. There was a petition for MJ for medical use and a petition for MJ for recreational use. And it was very clear in how those 2 petitions played out that the people with the medical petition had their shit together, much more than the recreational people. And that, by the way, is another reason why I think it's important for someone like me to also talk about this, because I do care about this topic, but a lot of people, in order to dismiss the topic, they just assume that anybody who's talking about MJ legalization is somebody who's a big MJ user. That's part of their lifestyle, that's part of their hobby, it's maybe daily use, whatever.
And they're just like, oh, you're just trying to legalize your hobby so you don't have to worry about it and get in trouble or whatever.
And that's not me, that's not who I am, and I still care very deeply about MJ legalization. I like to let people know that even if you've never tried it, never want to, if it's not part of your hobby, not part of your lifestyle, that I think you should care about MJ legalization, and we're going to talk about why. But first, makeup, obviously. So MJ-themed products aren't entirely new. Urban Decay has had an eyeshadow called Cush for 10 years, 15 years. It's been a long time. In fact, it's been discontinued. I don't think you can even find it anymore, but that was one of their, like, pretty early shades, and I remember seeing that around. But there was a push starting a couple years ago where we started to see a lot more products themed completely around MJ. So not just a single shade with kind of a, you know, a name that was sort of a little bit of a reference or whatever, but whole palettes that are absolutely just like themed around it. And we started to see some products that also include MJ-derived ingredients. And that's really the two groups that we're going to talk about today. So there are products that are just themed around MJ and around the culture and around the mystique that surrounds it as drug culture and club culture and all that sort of thing. And the products that actually have cannabis-derived ingredients in them. Now, just in case you didn't know and you were going to run out and buy these really quick, neither groups of these products, whether it has the cannabis-derived ingredients or not, neither one is going to get you high. That's not the way that it works. We're going to talk about THC a little bit later in the video. That's the chemical that actually has the psychoactive effects, but that chemical is not found in either group of products that we're about to talk about. So let's start with the products that use MJ as their theme. Now, the first one that I remember, I'm not saying this is the first one. I wasn't as plugged into indie makeup even a few years ago as I am today. So there could have been others, but the first one I really remember getting a lot of discussion on YouTube and in the makeup forums that I was looking at was the Kush Queen palette from Peachy Queen. So this is the first palette that I remember really hearing about, and it was kind of a big deal that there was this company that was putting out this like all MJ themed makeup palette. Not a single shade, but a whole palette of 12 different shades. Now, like I said, I'm not super into MJ just in my personal life, but if you've watched any of my videos pretty much, you know that I am super into green makeup. So if this is the theme that's going to get me a bunch of beautiful, gorgeous green eyeshadows, I'm here for it. And this one delivered pretty well. So this is 12 pans. There are 3 pans of beautiful greens. And so, you know, that's a quarter of the palette. That's pretty good. It's not as good as we're going to see. There are other palettes that do an even better job of fulfilling my green fantasies. But this has a couple of beautiful greens, a couple shimmers, one matte. We've got this beautiful purple. We've got this hot pink. We've got a bright yellow. This blue is absolutely gorgeous. And these are all sort of themed around different strains of MJ. So different types, we have Skywalker, Blueberry, OG Kush, Bubba Kush, Maui Wowie, things like that. So they're all named after strains of MJ, and it's got the pot leaf print on the background. Now, sometime after the Kush Queen, Peachy Queen actually came out with another MJ-themed palette, the Up in Smoke palette. So this is a second palette that they did, and this one is a lot different in terms of color story. So here's the color story. This is much more neutral. There's some kind of pinky tones. There is this one green. This is Sweet Leaf. This is a deep green shimmer. There's a black, but the rest of these are very neutral, a little bit pinky, a little bit peachy. Now, this palette, I did use this shade right here, Stoner, in my look for today. I used it just as kind of the little transition shade. If you want to see the full look, the full walkthrough, it is available on my website right now, janessaj.com, and I did use this shade right here. Now, the Up in Smoke palette is good. It's not as good as the Kush Queen, just because there's not as many shimmers. The shimmers are a little bit more subtle. The ones in Kush Queen are much more metallic, much shinier. These are still pretty, but they're a little bit more subtle. So a fun indie company that makes really beautiful, impactful highlighters is Bitch Slap Cosmetics. And they have a few MJ-themed highlighters in their collections. So this pan right here is the shade Mary Jane. Now, this used to have kind of the leaf print in it. I'm going to try to zoom in so you can see that a little bit better. But I've used this one a fair amount, and so it's kind of wiped away. This has been reformulated, it looks like. When I went on the website, they still have one that's called Mary Jane, but it looks much more lime green. This one is almost blue. So this is like a really blue-toned green, very turquoise, and it's got a nice silver kind of chrome look to it as well. This is the shade Blueberry Kush, and this is a beautiful blue highlighter that's got... These are so hard for me to use because I love these beautiful pan designs, and I just hate messing them up. Now, the one on the end actually looks like a vagine. The company, Bitch Slap Cosmetics, actually got quite a bit of press a few years ago because they released a whole line of highlighters that have all different kinds of genitalia, vagines, and peni, and boobs, and all kinds of fun things. So they have all different kinds of quirky, interesting pan designs. They also did a line of horror movie icons like Chucky and Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees. But if you are interested in a little hit of MJ beauty, they can help you out as well. Maybe I'll put that at the very end for the people who would like stick around. I have a couple of other random eyeshadow palettes from indie brands. This is the OMFG Kush palette. This is from OMFG Cosmetics. Now, OMFG is really random. I don't see this on their site anymore. A lot of their inventory just sort of changes and cycles. It seems to be probably just kind of a private label brand that just kind of is selling whatever's available, and once they're out of it, they're out. But this one I do really like. I've played with this a few times, and this is a beautiful, again, green, murky, dank kind of color story.
Did you amuse yourself by saying dank?
I did.
That's what I thought. You had that look like...
Then we have the Purple Kush palette. This is from Ruby May Cosmetics. I like this one because it does have a couple of beautiful greens, but it's mostly these beautiful purples, which is a little bit different for these MJ-themed products. And this is one that I used in a recent Face Friday. I did kind of a quirky weird. I'll go ahead and put the picture up on the screen. But I did kind of an odd look celebrating Novimpia's Legendary Creature video release. So they released the official music videos. They looked beautiful. I absolutely love Novimpia's channel, and that song, I was worried because let me tell you, the Rue Girls have put out some auto-tune nightmares into this world that are just not okay. Like, charges should be filed. But I actually really kind of like Legendary Creature by Novimpia. It's kind of a banger. So I love this purple and green, and I think this is a lot of fun. This is the High Times palette from Midas Cosmetics. This is another one that's got some beautiful greens, and again, these are the kinds of greens that I love. More blue-toned or more kind of in the middle. I do like swampy yellow greens and lime greens too, but I really like this shade is one of my favorites. This is Gelato. And they also had 2 groups of glitters that you could get. The glitter sets are 5 shades each. There's Mama Jane's and Aunt Mary's. They have a bunch of fun products, and if you need a little sparkle in your life, they got it. And even Walmart is getting in on the MJ-themed products. This is a palette, the Smoke Out palette from Hard Candy Cosmetics. And this one is available in your local Walmart store. As far as I can tell, they're still available. I know a lot of their stuff kind of comes and goes as well, but this is a full green, beautiful palette. And this has all kinds of shade names like Baked, Hazed, Burnt, Taupe, Lit Up, Kush, Blitzed, Trippin', etc. Who knew that Sam Walton was down to clown? But the biggest name currently in MJ-themed beauty, the only brand of all the products that I have, and the only brand that I know of to have their MJ-themed products in Sephora, is Melt Cosmetics. So these are a couple of lip products, and they're actually what I'm wearing today. This lip pencil is called 420, and this liquid lipstick is called Taupe. But they're best known for their 3 MJ-themed eyeshadow palettes. The first one of the 3, which is what I'm primarily wearing on my eyes today, is the Smoke Sessions palette. This is the first one of theirs that came out, and it came out not too long after the Peachy Queen. So Peachy Queen seemed to really kind of build up some buzz, and then Melt hit it hard with the Smoke Sessions. And this is a beautiful palette. I love this. These greens here, I used all 4 of these greens on my eyes. These are also lovely. These we're getting into a little bit more golds, and this is kind of a green infused brown and kind of an olivey brown, but these right here, that's my jam. The second palette that they released is the 420 palette. I'll go ahead and include a picture of that up here on the screen. Now, I didn't pick up this palette because the reviews were, shall we say, mixed. A lot of people really were not big fans of it. I think Teresa's Dead tried it and didn't love it. Angelica Nyqvist from Sweden, she tried it several times on her channel and just could not get it to work. The colors in there are beautiful. There's kind of a neon electric chartreuse that I am dying for, and it's the Sephora VIB sale right now, and it's taking all I can do to not just go and purchase it, but that one I haven't pulled the trigger on yet. Now, the newest release, which I should have been able to hold up like this, is the Mary Jane palette. God damn it, Miss Rona! And I was going to use that on my eyes with the smoke sessions. Originally, I had planned much more of a kind of neutral with green kind of look, but it didn't arrive. Ordered it the day that the sale opened on April 9th. I am Rouge, so I had the early access. Fancy. And I ordered it. It was originally set to be here on Wednesday, April 14th. And then it got updated and it said Friday the 16th. Did not come on Friday. Did not come on Saturday. And it's now Sunday the 18th. And it's still not here. And it's just messing with my whole week's plan. Damn it, Miss Rona. Get it together. So the Mary Jane palette is described as a cool, neutral, taupey, hazy collection inspired by MJ smoke and crystal-coated buds. Now, speaking of buds, this is a perfect segue to talk about the other group of products, which include ingredients that are derived from cannabis. And we'll talk about why they won't get you high. Welcome to chemistry class. I'm Professor Crossdresser. So the high you get from MJ is from a chemical called THC. Tetrahydrocannabinol, THC. So THC is found in the bud of the plant. So it's found in the actual MJ plant. All of the products that I'm going to show you today, and pretty much all the products that I've seen that mention hemp or cannabis or anything like that, are all derived from the seed. So the seed hasn't yet grown into the plant, so therefore the thing that creates the THC has not grown, and so it's not actually found in the seed. The most common ingredients that I've seen for either makeup or skincare products are cannabis seed oil or cannabis seed extract. So basically, they're using MJ references as a way to market a product, make it seem cool, appeal to people who are into that culture, that activity, but it's not related to the part that actually has psychoactive effects. Two products from Milk Makeup, both of which I used on my face today. This is the Milk Hydro Grip Primer, and this is the Kush Mascara. Both are described as having hemp-derived cannabis seed extract. The primer claims to hydrate and smooth skin and provide antioxidants, while the mascara uses the ingredient to condition and diffuse the fibers that are found in the mascara to your natural lashes. Now, a bigger offender in the marketing using drug culture to sell a product is Lime Crime and their lip blazes. Butter plus glaze equals blaze. Yeah, right. Spark it up! Now, they describe their products as containing top-shelf cannabis sativa seed oil. The phrase top shelf is clearly meant to invoke, going to a dispensary and looking for the more rare or the better strains. It definitely seems to be trying to play into that, this idea of weed culture and all of that. Again, still not going to get you high. It's just an oil in the gloss that's going to moisturize and hydrate your lips. Like basically any plant, fruit, or nut oil will do. Now, all of this that we've been talking about is also different from CBD oil, which is also derived from the marijuana plant, not the seed. So I'm going to link a video about CBD oil from JenLuv. I'm going to go ahead and include that up in the cards. It's about a year old, so still pretty current, although research is still emerging on this new fancy ingredient that everybody's been using. And there's still lots of things emerging about possible medical uses for CBD. But that's different from what we're talking about in these products. So now, to be honest, I haven't dug super deep into these seed-derived ingredients for makeup and skincare, but what I found in the research that I have done is that there's nothing to really suggest that the oil that comes from the seed is any more beneficial than any of the other oils that are common in makeup and skincare products. And in fact, there was some preliminary research that suggested that it's maybe not as effective as some of those more common oils that are used. Not that it's bad, just that it's not as good. So do you want to sacrifice, potentially some of the performance in order to play into the marketing of MJ culture? Now, maybe if we ask nice, JenLuv will do a follow-up and tell us even more. So now that we've gone through the makeup, let's shift and talk about legalization. And we're going to talk a bit more about THC. Now, there's going to be a lot of links down below in the description box. I'm going to include a lot of the articles that I used for my preliminary research, things to get you started. Professor Crossdresser here again. Let's dive in. So again, THC, tetrahydrocannabinol. It's a chemical that's found in the MJ plant, and it's a psychoactive compound that acts similarly to cannabinoid chemicals that our bodies produce naturally. Now, cannabinoid receptors are concentrated in the areas of the brain associated with thinking, memory, pleasure, coordination, and time perception. THC is one of the many compounds found in the resin of the MJ plant, and those compounds include CBD. Although some companies will use MJ culture to market CBD products as well, like we talked about with the Lime Crime Lip Blazes, CBD is non-psychoactive, and it can actually block the high that you get from THC if you use them together. So what are common reactions or side effects to MJ use? That should be obvious based on where the cannabinoid receptors in the brain are. Typical side effects include some motor impairment, especially for new users. And that's something to keep in mind for a lot of these side effects, a lot of things related to MJ use, is that they're going to be more pronounced in people who are not regular users. If somebody has used a lot of MJ and they've built up a tolerance, it's going to impact them differently, and there's going to be less effect from a smaller amount. So there's some motor impairment, there's problems with cognition and time perception, and of course, for people who are choosing to smoke, there can be irritation to the throat, coughing, sore throat, etc. Now, these side effects don't sound too bad, right? And the side effects are absolutely in line with alcohol, which is a substance that is legal and is regulated to people over 21 years of age. And because MJ doesn't include the thousands of chemicals that are also found in cigarette smoke, including more than 200 that are known to be toxic and even cancer-causing to humans, the side effects are less severe than cigarettes, which are legal and are regulated to people over 18 years of age. Despite this, MJ is considered by the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, or the DEA, as a Schedule I narcotic. As we go along, we'll talk a little bit more about why.
Seriously, it's racism.
But what about MJ's impact on the development of children and adolescents? Absolutely, there is evidence that MJ use can inhibit the development of children and adolescents. But these types of impairments are typical of alcohol and cigarettes as well. They're the same type and the same severity of impairments that we find with those products, which are both legal and regulated to people who meet certain age thresholds. There is absolutely no reason why MJ should not be legal and regulated in every state in this country right now. Just like alcohol, just like cigarettes. Now, luckily, some things are starting to change on a state-by-state basis. What's progressing the fastest, although the actual application and rollout is frustratingly inconsistent from state to state to state, is MJ for medicinal uses. We've all heard the stories about people going door to door, knocking on doctors' offices, trying to find anyone who will give them their green card. And while that certainly happens in states that haven't also legalized MJ for recreational use, it's not the majority of users, and it's a logical fallacy that purposely ignores all of the medicinal uses for MJ. So what is MJ actually used to treat? Now, regulations vary from state to state. In some states, it's approved for certain conditions, but not for others, and it really just is going to depend. So if you live in a state that has medical marijuana, make sure you check the regulations about what is covered. But the most common are chemotherapy side effects, muscle spasms, some pain disorders, especially chronic pain, and seizures. Now, somewhat less common is using MJ as a treatment for mental health applications, like anxiety or panic disorders. However, what a lot of people don't know is that the FDA has only ever actually approved MJ use for two very specific and rare forms of epilepsy: Dravet syndrome and Lennox-Gastaut syndrome. I'll include the spelling on the screen in case I butchered it. They haven't been able to approve more use cases because there just isn't enough research out there. There isn't enough research out there to prove to the FDA standards that these are safe applications for the use of MJ.
But wait, we have all these claims about other benefits, right? Why wouldn't people be fast-tracking the research to prove these benefits and get them approved?
The short answer, money. The long answer, also money. And, you guessed it, racism. Now let's leave Big Pharma out of this for now. Obviously, no big pharmaceutical company is really going to be jazzed about the idea of someone coming in and giving a safe, healthy, natural alternative to their products. But a lot of these big companies could very easily pivot and have their own MJ R&D developments. They could be working on better, more targeted strains for specific conditions. So they're not the biggest problem. Probably the biggest reason why more research isn't being done is because of money. Remember earlier when we mentioned MJ as being listed on Schedule 1 narcotics by the DEA? Do you know what other drugs are also Schedule 1? Heroin, ecstasy, and LSD, to name just a few. They are described as likely to be abused and lacking in medical value. Because of this, any research into that particular drug requires permitting, and the permits are very, very expensive and they're hard to obtain. Now, at one point, the DEA did consider lowering MJ down to a Schedule 2 narcotic, which includes things like oxycodone and Ritalin, but they decided against it. But they have shown some interest in recent years of being more open to allowing additional research into the use of MJ for medicinal purposes. Hopefully, if that continues, they will make the process easier and we can start to get better, fuller research and get MJ approved for more specific use cases. So where's this racism that I keep mentioning? I'm glad you asked. So we're about to dig into some really ugly facts about drugs, drug enforcement, and our prison system in the United States. Do you want the TLDR? Here it is. The war on drugs is a war on black and brown people. Period. Now the idea of a war on drug goes... Drug? Just one. Just the one drug.
We're on drug.
War on drug. The idea of a war on drugs and that terminology goes back to President Richard Nixon. Who knew that guy would get dethroned as the worst president ever? But the roots of it actually go back much further, to the end of the U.S. Civil War and the 13th Amendment to the Constitution. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery. No arguments here, that's good, right? It is, but the wording of that amendment has actually had some far-reaching implications to this day, whether they were intended or not. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. And that's where the problem comes in, except as punishment for a crime. So slavery is abolished, but there's an asterisk. Southern states had to ratify the 13th Amendment in order to be given representation in the reunified government. They were worried that if they just required these southern states to include the abolishment of slavery in their state constitutions, there was nothing to stop them from reforming with another constitution that then allowed for slavery. So they needed something at the federal level, and so that's why we have the 13th Amendment. And so in order to get representation, they had to ratify this. But what you see after that point is a change in how black people fit into society, especially in the South, but across the country. First, there had always been a long history of stereotyping black people and thinking and talking about black people as if they were subhuman, less developed, lesser evolved, and equating them with animals. But after reunification and the 13th Amendment, we start to see those stereotypes shift and change. And instead, they start to paint black people as inherently dangerous. Black men were depicted as violent, more prone to crime, and especially predatory towards white women. Black women were portrayed as sexually promiscuous and sexually depraved. So in addition to the rise of Jim Crow laws, which were all about legislating a separation between black people and white people, You also saw laws cropping up related to just general behavior and deportment that related to men and women, and those were an excuse to be able to funnel black people into the judicial system. As these stereotypes developed and progressed, you begin to see more laws being passed related to activities around these perceptions of black men and black women. And in these types of crimes, and even in other types of crime, you really begin to see a disparity in the punishments that are handed out to black defendants and white defendants. This is a disparity in sentencing based on race that continues to this day. Let's take a look at a meme that's made the rounds a few times on social media. There's a Snopes article about this meme, but the basic premise is that you have two men. 19-year-old Chase Leglightner, who is white, and 21-year-old Lamar Lloyd, who is black. Both were charged with armed robbery, both entered a no-contest plea, and both had equal sentencing points. Sentencing points are a system in Florida that judges use to determine a mandatory minimum sentence. Each had a single previous misdemeanor on their records. Both went before the exact same judge. Leglightner was sentenced to less than 2 years, and he was sentenced to time already served. Lloyd was sentenced to 26 years. Now, the Snopes article does point out a few discrepancies with the meme that went around, and attempts to provide some context. The biggest inaccuracy is that these two defendants were not seen on the same day. They were actually seen approximately a year apart. But it was in the same courthouse by the same judge. But the rest of the context is where it starts to get interesting. So the sentencing points for both men were exactly the same, and both of them would have led to a mandatory minimum sentence of 82.65 months, or just under 7 years. In Lloyd's case, there were two charges. So Lloyd was sentenced to 13 years for each charge, for a total sentence of 26 years. For Leglightner, the judge invoked a mitigated departure from minimum sentencing and sentenced him to time served. So what were the circumstances that made these two cases so different? One of them was that Leglightner expressed remorse. So the white boy said he was sorry? Leglightner was part of an armed robbery against 3 individuals, where Lloyd's crime happened at 2 public locations, a Pizza Hut and a gas station. Another factor that was claimed? A Pizza Hut employee gave a signed deposition saying that Lloyd made him fear for his life. So the scary black man made you scared. When this was initially reported, the 12th Circuit refuted these claims. And they said that there were monumental factual differences between the cases that justified the sentencing. But if the factual differences are so monumental, shouldn't that have been reflected in the sentencing points? The sentencing points are based on the facts of the case. Where did the crime occur? Who was involved? What actions did someone take or not take that contributed to the crime itself? They're based on the facts. The additional context facts are actually just based on perceptions. Leglightner expressed remorse, and they believed him. Someone said that Lloyd made them afraid for their life, and they believed them. Perceptions are not facts. And as we talked about with the perceptions of black people since the end of the Civil War, perceptions can be greatly influenced by our biases and stereotypes. The monumental factual differences were not factual at all. They were perceptual. Is perceptual the right word? Or is it perceptional?
Perceptional.
Perceptual. No. Perceptional. Perceptimated. So combine that with a few hundred years of oppression and cultural stereotypes about black people, and what do you get? This meme. Except that it's played out in courtrooms across this country every single day. So why is it important to talk about racial disparities in sentencing when we're talking about MJ legalization and medical uses? Because right now, nearly half of people in prison are in prison for drug-related offenses. According to research by the ACLU, despite roughly equal rates of usage, black people are 3.73 times more likely than white people to be arrested on marijuana charges. And once they're arrested and become part of the judicial system, we start to see those racial disparities in sentencing. And there's an added bonus to all of this for racists. It's like a racist gift with purchase. Remember how MJ is on that Schedule 1 list of narcotics by the DEA? That means that it's much easier for marijuana offenses to be charged as felonies. And do you know what usually happens to felons? They often lose their right to vote. I'll link an article down below from the National Conference of State Legislatures that includes all of the details about different policies for different states. But in all except 3 states, felons lose their right to vote for a period of time, at least while they're incarcerated, and often for a period of time afterwards. In some states, they need a pardon by the governor to regain their right to vote. So not only are black people more likely to be convicted on marijuana-related felonies, but then those felonies are often stripping them of their right to vote for the people who make the laws about marijuana enforcement. It's the well-oiled machine of white supremacy.
Hold on, you're talking about incarceration. What does that have to do with the 13th Amendment and the ending of slavery? Jail isn't slavery.
Oh, sweetheart. Were you not aware of prison labor and for-profit prisons that require inmates to work, and they're either not compensated at all, or they are paid only pennies per hour, while the companies that run the prisons make millions and in some cases billions of dollars? Aww. This video is already 800 years long, so I don't have time to get into the whole for-profit prison system and all of the problems with our incarceral system, but there is a fantastic documentary. If you're looking to have a little bit of rage about the prison system in your life, it's a documentary from 1998. It's called The Farm Angola Prison, and it will make your blood boil. It is such a good and infuriating introduction to this topic. So with MJ, we've got a war on drugs that disproportionately attacks black and brown people and often strips them of their voting rights. But what about opioids? Data from the Kaiser Family Foundation suggests that white people are much more likely to abuse and die from opioid addiction than black people. Ironically, some of this can be attributed to racially biased perceptions about black people in the medical industry. There has long been a stereotypical association of black people with higher pain tolerances and a resistance to pain, and so they're actually prescribed opiate painkillers much less often. But I never hear about a war on opiates. What I hear about is the opioid crisis. In a further ironic twist, the legalization of MJ could potentially help with this too. In an episode of Netflix's The Fix, their data expert, Mona Chalabi, presented some really interesting information about the opioid crisis in Colorado. Now, like pretty much every other state in the country, Colorado was seeing opioid deaths rise every year from 2000, until 2014, when they saw a decline in overdoses and deaths from opioids. So what changed in 2014? That was the year that Colorado legalized marijuana. It's possible that people who had an addiction were substituting marijuana for opioids, and they saw a great reduction in the number of people who overdosed and died. So a lot of this is just scratching the surface on a lot of these topics, but I hope that you'll take a look at all of the resources that I've included down below in the description box. You'll start to do some of your own research, and I hope that you can start to see some of the immense benefits of legalizing marijuana across the country. I absolutely believe that every single state in this country should legalize and regulate. That's the key part. We're not talking about a free-for-all. They should legalize and regulate the sale and use of marijuana for both medical and recreational purposes. We can talk about reparations for those who were wrongly imprisoned later. On a personal note, both of my grandparents at the end of their lives experienced a lot of pain as part of their final illness. And I can't help but think about how their last moments on this earth might have been different if they had had access to safe, legal cannabis. I don't know if they would have taken advantage of it, but it's something that wasn't even available to them because of our system, this system that upholds white supremacy and is constantly destroying the lives of black and brown people. And that's a system where nobody wins. Thank you so much for watching. Please give me a comment below. I would love to hear from you, and let's keep this conversation going. While you're down there, don't forget to give me a thumbs up, or you can give me a thumbs down. I'll take the engagement either way. The algorithm isn't a picky bitch, and neither am I. Check my grinder. Grinder, marijuana, get it? Oh, sometimes I crack myself up with my own dad jokes. While you're down there, don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell icon so you'll be notified of all future uploads. I upload at least one video a week, and sometimes I even have a bonus video for you. Ooh, smoking. If you'd like to chat, banter, or commiserate between uploads, all of my social media will be linked down in the description box, including a link to my website, The World of Champagne, at janessaj.com. Thanks so much for watching. I appreciate all of you. I appreciate all of you who made it all the way to the end of this long video, but it is something that I really do care about deeply. And until I see you again, bye. So, do you want to sacrifice a goat? What was I going to say?
Yes, I do want to sacrifice a goat.
The 13th Amendment abolished slavery. Slavery? God damn it. Slavery. Are you done?
Oh,
As you're like sighing.
sorry. I'm gonna eat some cake.
Okay.
Let me just open it up. Oh, that's so pretty. Sorry, you have serious talk, and I'm like,
It's alright, I'll just pause the discussion of racial disparities
I
in
know,
sentencing in this country while you eat cake. There's the vagine!